The woman had committed a minor parking violation, a fleeting inconvenience, but that alone was enough to make her the target of an annoyed patrol officer. The woman tried to cooperate, offering to fix the car's position immediately. But instead of professionalism, she received an arrogant attitude, prying questions, and a flat refusal. When the woman pointed out that the police officer's behavior was inappropriate and beyond his authority, blind rage set in. The woman had to stand and listen to demeaning words, vicious insults directed at her skin color, words that no one should have to hear, especially from a representative of the law. And then, just because she dared to speak up to protect herself, just because she did not silently endure injustice, that woman was handcuffed. She was treated roughly. Her hands were locked behind her back like a criminal, right in the middle of a crowded street, in front of curious and whispering eyes. The policeman was pleased, thinking that he had taught her a lesson in being reasonable. But he had made an unforeseen mistake, a mistake born of prejudice and blind abuse of power. He had no idea who he was messing with. He had no idea that his actions of illegally detaining and humiliating this woman would have dire consequences for his own career. The wheel of fate was about to turn dramatically. What happens next at the police station? What truth will come out? And what price will this police officer pay? Join us as we follow this tense story of prejudice, abuse of power, and an unexpected ending. Late afternoon cast a pale yellow over the office buildings and busy streets near the district courthouse. The rush-hour traffic slowed, the occasional honk of a car horn punctuated by the loud chatter of people. Alicia Warren, a black woman in her 40s, had just emerged from a long and tense court session. She wore a well-fitted charcoal gray business suit, her intelligent, sharp face tired but still professional. She needed to stop by her partner's office a few blocks away to pick up some important documents before heading home. She drove her silver Ford Fusion sedan, slowly searching for a parking spot on the already crowded street. Finally, she found a small space between two other cars. Given the tight space and her haste, Alicia attempted to parallel park, but perhaps not quite perfectly. As she turned off the engine and stepped out, she caught a glimpse of the rear of her car jutting out of the line, slightly off-putting to cars that wanted to pull up close, but certainly not blocking the path or causing any immediate danger. She figured she would just stop by the law office for a few minutes, grab some paperwork, and then leave. She locked the car and prepared to leave. At that moment, a city police cruiser slowly pulled up. The driver was Officer Gary Thompson, a white man in his early 30s with a permanent frown on his face, who was patrolling alone. As he passed Alicia's car, he had to swerve slightly to avoid the rear end of the car. This slight inconvenience, combined with the sight of a well-dressed black woman stepping out of a relatively new car, immediately triggered Thompson's preconceived notions. He felt uncomfortable, an irrational irritation rising in him. Another arrogant, lawless person, he thought, and decided to stop and correct himself. Thompson turned on his red and blue lights, stopped his patrol car right behind Alicia's, and stepped out with authority. He walked straight toward Alicia as she turned to leave. "Hey, what kind of parking is that?" Thompson's voice boomed loudly and rudely behind Alicia, without a greeting, without any courtesy. "Don't you think you're blocking the way?" Alicia was startled by the loud voice and the aggressive attitude. She turned, looked at the officer, then back at her car. She noticed the rear end sticking out. "Oh, sorry, officer," she replied calmly, though she was annoyed by his tone. "I guess I didn't park close enough. I'll back up a little now." She was willing to cooperate and make amends, but Thompson didn't give her that chance. He waved her off. "What are you trying to fix? You parked so badly and you want to fix it? Do you even know how to drive, or did you buy a license?" He deliberately used demeaning, insulting words. "Give me your license and registration, hurry up!" His arrogant, commanding attitude clearly showed his intention to make things difficult. Despite being extremely upset by Officer Thompson's rude and unreasonable behavior, Alicia remained calm. She knew that arguing with an agitated police officer on the street was not the way to go. She quietly opened her purse, took out her driver's license and vehicle registration, and handed them to Thompson. Thompson snatched the papers from her hand, glanced at the photo and the name Alicia Warren on the license, then looked her up and down with a critical, assessing gaze. A black woman, wearing an expensive-looking business suit, driving a relatively new car. These factors, through Thompson's preconceived notions, became suspicious. Alicia Warren! He muttered the name, then chuckled. She dresses like a lawyer and a civil servant, he said sarcastically, though he didn't know her exact profession. But parking is a pain. She must be in a hurry to do something shady. That's why she's so flustered, right? He began to make negative innuendos, playing on deeply held stereotypes about black people and people who looked successful. He implied that she didn't know basic traffic laws, that people like her often broke the law or acquired their wealth through illegitimate means. His tone became increasingly contemptuous and insulting. Alicia took a deep breath, trying to control the anger boiling inside her. She couldn't believe a police officer would do something like that over a minor parking violation. She decided to respond, not with anger, but with her knowledge of the law, even if she didn't reveal her identity. "Officer Thompson," she said, her voice still professional but noticeably colder, each word clear and sharp. "First, my not parking perfectly parallel to the curb is, if anything, a minor parking violation, and I have requested immediate correction. Second, the manner and language you are using to address me is completely inappropriate, disrespectful, and beyond the authority of a police officer on duty. You have no legal basis whatsoever to make baseless assumptions or derogatory statements about me based on my appearance or race." She looked Thompson straight in the eye. "If you believe I have violated the parking regulations, please proceed to issue a ticket in accordance with the procedures and regulations of the law. I know my rights and obligations, as well as the limits of your authority. I am willing to accept and pay a fine if the ticket is issued legally. Your current actions and words are unacceptable." Being lectured so clearly and confidently about the law and authority by a black woman, the person he was trying to bully, felt like a slap in the face to Officer Thompson. His hurt ego, anger at being shot back, and inherent prejudice flared up. He could not accept being questioned and belittled by someone he considered inferior to him. "You dare argue with me?" Thompson shouted, his voice filled with anger, moving closer to Alicia, almost invading her personal space. His face was red, his eyes blazing with hostility. "Who do you think you are to talk to me? Do you know the rules? I'm telling you, I am the rules here." Then he began to spew more vile slurs, words Alicia had only heard in hate crime files, words that belittled people based on their skin color, questioned women's intelligence and status. He spoke loudly, as if to humiliate her in public. "I'm warning you for the last time. Shut your filthy mouth," Thompson roared, pointing his finger at Alicia. "Or else don't blame me for arresting you for resisting a law enforcement officer." He decided to escalate the situation, using his power to silence and punish the woman who dared to challenge him. Faced with Officer Thompson's aggression and outright threats, Alicia tried to stand her ground. She knew that if she backed down now, she would not only be accepting injustice to herself, but also indirectly condoning this abuse of power. "You have no legal basis to arrest me just because I asked you to behave properly and obey the law," Alicia said, her voice steady even as her heart pounded with tension and anger. But for Thompson at this moment, reason and law had become meaningless. Alicia's verbal resistance in his eyes was evidence of resistance. "No basis? You resist me with your insolent mouth is enough," he shouted, and without hesitation, reached out and grabbed Alicia's arm. Alicia instinctively jerked her hand back from the sudden attack. "Don't touch me!" "Aha! There you go! You're going against me!" Thompson was like he had found gold, and used that as the perfect excuse. He used all his strength as a grown man to grab Alicia's arm and twist it behind her back, causing her to ache. "Let me go! What are you doing?" Alicia cried out, struggling to keep her balance. But Thompson ignored her. He pulled a pair of shiny metal handcuffs from his belt and, with one brutal motion, locked them around Alicia's wrists. He deliberately tightened the grip, forcing the cold metal to press into her flesh, causing pain and discomfort. "Let's show you what it means to be rude to a police officer," he muttered with glee. The incident took place right on the sidewalk of a fairly busy street. Many passers-by stopped, curious and stunned, to watch the scene of a well-dressed woman being violently handcuffed by the police for what appeared to be a parking incident. Murmurs arose. Some took out their phones, perhaps intending to record or call someone. Alicia felt a sense of humiliation, unlike anything she had ever felt before. She was being treated like a criminal, handcuffed and publicly humiliated in the street for a minor infraction, and for daring to speak up for her rights against a racist abuser. Anger and humiliation welled up in her throat, but she forced herself to hold it in, took a deep breath, straightened her back, and held her head high. Her eyes fixed on Thompson, not a trace of fear, only cold contempt and a steely determination to see this through. "Are you done?" Thompson asked sarcastically, after he had secured Alicia's arms. He pushed her toward the patrol car parked nearby. "Get in. We'll talk at the station." He opened the back door of the patrol car, shoved Alicia into the hard, cramped seat, and slammed the door shut without mercy. Then he turned around, perhaps to radio in to report the arrest of a disruptive and resisting subject, or simply to enjoy a few more seconds of victory before driving away. Little did he know that this was not the end, but only the beginning of his own downfall. Officer Thompson had just finished a brief radio call, reporting the arrest of the resisting female subject, his tone still angry but mixed with smugness, when another police car suddenly appeared from behind and slowly stopped right next to his patrol car. Thompson frowned slightly, wondering who would be coming at this time. The door of the police car opened, and two people stepped out, surprising Thompson. They were Sergeant Eva Rostova, a tough, experienced female sergeant with her blonde hair tied back in a bun, and Lieutenant Marcus Jones, a tall, stern-faced lieutenant who was one of the most influential people in the area command. "Thompson? What's going on here?" Sergeant Rostova spoke first, her voice professional but slightly questioning, as she saw Thompson and the patrol car stopped in the middle of the road with their lights still flashing. Lieutenant Jones stood beside them, his eyes keenly observing the situation. Perhaps they were on a routine patrol through the area, or had overheard Thompson's vague report on the radio and decided to stop by as part of surveillance procedures. Thompson looked a little embarrassed, but quickly regained his false confidence. "Hey, Sarge. Hey, Lieutenant," he replied. "No big deal. I just arrested this subject for obstructing parking, failure to cooperate, and resisting arrest." He nodded toward the back seat of his patrol car. Instinctively, Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones both turned their eyes to the woman sitting in the back seat, her hands cuffed behind her back. And that was the moment everything changed. Rostova and Jones both paused at almost the same moment. Their eyes widened in surprise, then turned to confusion and seriousness. They had worked closely with the district attorney's office for years, and they knew the faces of the key prosecutors well. "Good heavens! Alicia?" Sergeant Rostova blurted out, her voice filled with disbelief. She moved closer to the patrol car window to get a better look. Lieutenant Jones recognized it immediately. His bushy brows furrowed, the seriousness on his face increasing exponentially. "ADA Warren? What the hell is going on here, Thompson?" His voice was low, filled with anger and a demand for immediate explanation. Hearing his two superiors call him Alicia, then his title ADA Warren, with such shock and seriousness, Officer Thompson felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to look at the woman in the car, then back at his two superiors standing there with expressions of disbelief mixed with hidden anger. Ada Warren? Assistant District Attorney Alicia Warren, the black woman he had just insulted, berated, handcuffed, and arrested for a minor parking violation and daring to argue? Thompson's brain desperately tried to connect the dots. Impossible. But the eyes of Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones told no lies. The terrible truth hit Thompson like a hammer. He had made a fatal mistake, arresting a deputy prosecutor without any justification, and then a series of abuses and insults. His police career, which he had devoted so many years to, was over. There could be even more serious legal consequences. Thompson's face turned white in an instant, drained of blood. Cold sweat poured out like a shower, soaking his collar. His limbs began to shake uncontrollably. He looked at Alicia through the car window, his eyes now filled with panic and utter fear. "Sarge? Lieutenant?" Thompson turned quickly to his two superiors, his voice slurred and panicked, and tried to make a weak excuse. There must have been a serious misunderstanding here. I really didn't know it was Ada Warren. She didn't produce her official identification. A clumsy lie, since Alicia was under no obligation to do so while in plain clothes and off-duty. She wasn't cooperating. Seeing his two superiors looking at him with cold eyes, showing no sign of trust, Thompson became even more desperate. He turned towards the patrol car, trying to speak to Alicia, his voice full of pleading and fear. "Ada Warren, I'm truly sorry. I'm so sorry. I was so angry it was completely wrong. Please be kind. Please say a word for me to the lieutenant and sergeant. I have a family, a small child." But Thompson's pathetic plea was met with an eerie silence. Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones looked at him with disappointment and contempt. They knew Thompson was a prejudiced and sometimes hot-tempered man, but this action had crossed all limits. Lieutenant Jones's voice was stern, and he gave a firm order. "Thompson! Uncuff Ada Warren immediately. Now!" While Thompson trembled as he searched for the key to unlock the handcuffs, Alicia Warren, freed, calmly stepped out of the car. She adjusted her slightly disheveled business suit and smoothed her hair. She looked at Thompson with cold, emotionless eyes, then turned to her two superior officers, her voice calm but filled with weight and determination. "Sergeant Rostova, Lieutenant Jones, thank you for your timely intervention. I request a formal and comprehensive investigation into the serious abuse of power, racial discrimination, and unlawful detention of Officer Gary Thompson." The plea of a deputy prosecutor and a direct victim could not be ignored. Officer Thompson's fate was sealed in that moment. A formal investigation request from ADA Alicia Warren, along with the direct presence of Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones, initiated a swift and serious disciplinary process against Officer Gary Thompson. On the scene, Lieutenant Jones ordered Thompson to surrender his badge, weapon, and radio. "You are suspended immediately, pending an investigation by the Internal Affairs Department," Lieutenant Jones said, his voice uncompromising. "Return to the station immediately and do not leave until further notice. Is that clear?" Thompson, his face ashen, could only mumble, "Yes, Lieutenant," and then slunk off into his patrol car, feeling as if the world had just collapsed beneath his feet. Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones then returned to Ada Warren to express their sincere apologies once again. They expressed their outrage at Thompson's actions and pledged that the case would be investigated fairly and thoroughly, and that the right person would be brought to justice without any cover-up. They offered to take her home, but Alicia politely declined, saying that she could handle herself and only asked that the case be handled according to the law. The next day, the Internal Affairs Division of the Police Department officially got involved. They took a detailed statement from ADA Warren, recording the entire incident from her perspective, including Thompson's insulting words and threatening behavior. They also took statements from Sergeant Rostova and Lieutenant Jones as high-level witnesses present at the scene. IAD investigators also sought out and took statements from people who witnessed the incident on the street. Although not everyone was willing to cooperate, several provided information confirming Thompson's aggressive behavior, verbal abuse, and rough handcuffing of Alicia. The data from Officer Thompson's body camera will be the most important evidence. The video and audio recordings will expose the whole truth about Thompson's attitude, words, and actions compared with Ada Warren's testimony. The investigation did not take long to reach its conclusion. The evidence gathered was clear. Officer Gary Thompson had seriously abused his authority over a minor traffic violation, had used racially discriminatory, offensive language and attitudes toward a citizen, had unnecessarily escalated the situation, and made an unlawful arrest without a solid legal basis. His actions were not only a serious violation of the police code of conduct and ethics, but also showed signs of criminality. Based on the results of the investigation and the inexcusable nature of the violation, the Internal Affairs Division has recommended the maximum disciplinary action. The Chief of Police, after reviewing the entire record and possibly consulting with the District Attorney's Office, has approved the following decision. Permanently dismiss Officer Gary Thompson from the City Police Department. The firing was made public, ending Thompson's scandal-ridden career in disgrace. While this story does not mention his criminal prosecution and prison sentence, the firing was devastating, costing him his job, his pension, and his reputation. Alicia Warren or the District Attorney's Office may consider further legal action, but Thompson's removal from the profession was an important step in protecting the public. The incident has become a hot topic of discussion within the police department and among local legal professionals. It is a painful reminder of the persistence of racial prejudice and the potential for abuse of power among those entrusted with the duty of upholding the law. It also highlights the importance of officers remaining calm, acting professionally, and following proper procedures, and the need for strong oversight and disciplinary mechanisms. For ADA Alicia Warren, the experience left a psychological scar, but also strengthened her determination in her work. She understands better than anyone that the fight for justice and equality is still full of challenges, even for those working in the legal system. She continues her work with a new determination, carrying with her the lesson that standing up against injustice, no matter how small or large, is always necessary and right. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next meaningful stories, because tomorrow we will have another meaningful story for you.